Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, FPL Consult here, and in today's video we have the Game Week 9 transfer tips, which is a video where I speak about some of the more popular players you guys have requested in the YouTube comments, over on Instagram and also on Twitter as well, and I basically share my opinion. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this one. Please do drop a like, please do subscribe as well, and things may look a little bit different. I may sound a bit different. The background may also be a little bit blurry. I hope that is okay with you guys because I am recording this without my usual setup. I am traveling at the moment for a business trip, so things may look a little bit different, but if you still appreciate the fact that I'm recording this while I am on the trip, please do subscribe and help the channel to hit 10,000 subscribers very soon. And also we are running a charity drive at the moment for Mindset, where I am donating 20 pence per new subscriber to Mindset charity, which is a mental health charity, something very close to my heart. So all you have to do is hit the subscribe button and you will be contributing more to charity. So let's start off with the first player that you guys have asked me to speak about, and that is none other than Erling Haaland. Now, he is currently still the highest owned player in the game, 73.6% owned, but that is very much lower than what he initially started out at. There has been 27k transfers out so far in Game Week 9 as of recording, of course, and I think it comes as no surprise because people are losing patience with Haaland. He has blanked for the past 3 game weeks already, and I think looking at the fixtures that he blanked in, you would be surprised that he even didn't get any returns in these games, right? Those were not difficult opposition at all, and even the last game against Wolves, you would have expected Haaland to get something, but he didn't get anything whatsoever. So people are losing patience and they're transferring him out. But here's what I have to say, right? I think at this point, what we are feeling is the effects of a 15.4 million asset that we have been full aware of, that if he blanks, and many people are captaining him as well because of the easier fixtures, if he's so expensive and we also captain him and he blanks, the effects are very great in that the other teams without Haaland, who are captaining someone else, potentially doing better, and also having the money to spread around to get better assets all around their squad, are generally doing better. So basically the non-Haaland squads are really doing very well at the moment, and the Haaland squads are the ones that are suffering. So I think we're feeling the effects now, but what I would say is that definitely now in Game Week 9 is not a time to sell Haaland despite him blanking for the past 3 game weeks, and it's simply because he has Southampton at home in Game Week 9. Now, some people think he's even a triple captain option against Southampton at home. Some people are obviously on the other end of the spectrum thinking that 27k transfers out, you're one of them and you've kind of lost patience. So I think right now at this point in time, I don't think he's a sell, as I've mentioned. There will be a time to sell him, potentially in the next few game weeks where you look at the fixtures, you could very well offload him soon enough. But I think now in Game Week 9, despite how he has played, it's not the time to sell him. And also, I think in terms of the drop-off in performance for City, in terms of attacking returns, I think it largely also comes down to the fact that Kevin De Bruyne has been missing for quite a while, and the attack at this point in time also feels a bit like it's lacking a little bit of creativity at the moment. So I think at this point in time, despite them having lots of possession in games, they are just not creating a lot, and that's why Haaland is kind of being starved of opportunities, because we also see at this point in time how reliant he is on the supply that comes into him, and if he doesn't get that, then he pretty much blanks, which is what we've seen so far. So it's not looking good, and I think in terms of triple captaincy as well, simply because the creativity or the kind of supply to Haaland at this point is not looking good, I don't think I would go so far as to triple captain Haaland. But then again, I don't think I'd be on the other end where I think you need to sell him. I definitely think against Southampton, he's in my own team as well. I have no intention to sell him, and he's probably going to be my captain against Southampton, which is a really good fixture. So I don't see why people should be selling him. I don't mind keeping him for one more game week at the minimum. I think it could be slightly different if you're kind of moving for other premiums elsewhere. But surely selling Haaland in Game Week 9 against Southampton is not the game week to do it. You can do it in other game weeks. So I would say Haaland is still a hold. Keep him in your teams and give him at least one more week. Further down the line, I think if you want to sell him, I don't mind that at all. So next up is Kai Havertz, who has already seen 58k transfers out so far. This comes after Arsenal lost 2-0 to Bournemouth after going down to 10 men. Now, a lot of people at this point in time are quite frustrated with Arsenal assets and cannot wait to get rid of them. If you're holding on to, say for example, double Arsenal defense, they have blanked 3 game weeks in a row against Southampton, Leicester and Bournemouth. So nobody expected this. Everyone thought that they would get clean sheets in those games. So they somehow failed to do so. And then attacking returns wise against Bournemouth, they also didn't score any. And that, I think, largely came down to them dropping down to 10 men. But now when you look at the fixtures moving forward, I think a lot of people are tempted to sell Kai Havertz. I don't mind it as well. And I don't think I need to convince people to sell him. What I would want to do, I guess, in this section is more play a bit of a devil's advocate, in that there are some reasons that I am considering myself as well to keep Havertz for. Now, I'm definitely not set on either selling or keeping him, but I just wanted to share a little bit of my thoughts on him and why I might keep him. So I think there are some good things to Kai Havertz in that, firstly, Saka is still injured at this point in time. That has good and bad implications. The good implication is that Havertz will likely be on penalties. The bad side to that is obviously Saka creates loads of chances for Arsenal, and Havertz does depend quite a bit on the chances created by the wingers, whether it's Martinelli on the left or Saka on the right. So I think there's pros and cons to Saka being out. That's one. I think secondly as well, you do have to consider the fact that the past few games, they have gone down to 10 men, and that has been tricky to navigate. They have been, in situations where they needed to make a certain change in structure, and that obviously has affected output in terms of the attackers as well. So I think Kai Havertz obviously suffered in terms of returns there. What I would say about Kai Havertz as well is that his form individually has been really good. Now, yes, he didn't return against Bournemouth, but he's been playing very well. Whether, you look back into the past 2 game weeks against Southampton and Leicester, he returned in both. And then the weeks before as well, he's done really well in terms of getting good number of shots on target and also getting good chances in those games. So I think in general, there are still things to like about Kai Havertz. It's just at this point in time that the fixtures, looking at it right now, puts me off a little bit at this point. But I would also say that something that plays at the back of my mind is that Havertz to me feels also like a bit of a big game player, in that when I look at the fixtures moving forward in Liverpool, Newcastle and Chelsea, I don't put it past Kai Havertz to get goals in this game. He is that sort of a player to me. So I think I don't mind holding on to him for those reasons. And in that sense, I don't think he is a must sell. But I also would say that I have a good mind to sell him as well, simply because I look at the replacements for him at this point in time, they're a lot cheaper. There's a lot of good cheap forward options popping up with very good fixtures for a good amount of time. Players like Cunha, Larson as well, who just returned against Man City. There's Vista coming back from injury. There's Raul Jimenez, who's been doing really well for Fulham as well. Lots of different options popping up could also push me to sell Kai Havertz and go for one of those cheaper options. So things to consider at this point in time. I think there's pros and cons. It's not very straightforward for this Kai Havertz pick. Let me know what you guys are doing with Havertz in the comments down below, and let's have a look at the next player. So next up is Son Heung-min, who has seen 122k transfers in so far, and he was also the subject of a huge amount of controversy over the last few days, simply because of the Areola own goal, where FPL initially did not award him the assist, and then they changed that and awarded him the assist, deleted the tweet after that, and then a couple of days later they said they will not be awarding the assist for Son Heung-min. So I think at this point, aside from that kind of controversy, I really want to focus on him as a pick from game week 9 onwards, and there's a lot to like about him, so I think transferring him in makes a lot of sense if you're able to afford. There's a couple of things we saw in game week 8 that was very promising. Firstly, he's had 2 weeks of rest over the international break. He did not go and travel with the squad. You saw him recharged and fresh, and he did really well. He got majority of the big chances that Spurs had against West Ham, and he could have very well gotten more than that goal he scored against West Ham. And form-wise, I think he's someone that you definitely back to do quite well with the fixture run they have coming up. So penalties as well is something that he offers as a pick. There's lots of things to like, so he seems a bit like an obvious transfer in. But also, I just want to offer a slightly different perspective on Son. I have him myself, and I don't think these are huge things that should put anyone off buying Son. I think he's a perfectly good buy at this point. I just wanted to offer a little bit of a opposing view in that at this point, when I looked at the West Ham game, and also in the earlier games where Son featured this season, his starting position seems to be very wide on the left. Now, that may or may not have a very huge impact on his returns, because you did see in the counter-attacking phase that he scored, where he did start on the left as well, and that was when he dribbled in, and then, beat the defender and got a shot away and scored. So I think there's good things and bad things in that Son is holding his position out wide when they are in possession, but on the counter as well, he then has a lot of space to run into at the back. So I think at this point, that's not something that puts me off a huge amount, but I did observe that he's the one holding a large majority of the width on the left. And secondly as well, he has been the subject of a number of early substitutions, and this was even earlier in the season when injury was not an issue for him. This was just basically a decision that, Ange Postecoglou made in a couple of games earlier this season, that he wanted to substitute Son off. I think at this point for game week 8 that we just saw, him being substituted slightly earlier could have come down to him being injured for the past few weeks and him only just coming back from injury. So I wouldn't put too much thought into that. But also, I just look back into the earlier game weeks and he does seem to be the subject of an early substitution here and there. So that's something else I would acknowledge when buying Son. But aside from that, as we just spoke about all the great things about Son that you guys know as well, I think he's a perfectly good transfer in. Those things I just mentioned won't really put me off too much, but I have it at the back of my mind as well. And if you want to buy him and you can afford him, I think he's a great buy. So next up is Gvardiol, who has already seen 159k transfers in so far, and I think it largely comes down to his game week 8 performance against Wolves, where despite him not keeping a clean sheet, he got a double-digit haul there because he scored an absolute worldly against Wolves. So he always had it in his locker. We already saw that in the later parts of the previous season where he was picking up a lot of attacking returns. So I think also in terms of his minutes as well, he feels to me like the most secure in terms of Man City defenders. When I compare him to someone like Rico Lewis, Akanji, Ruben Diaz for example, I feel like Josko Gvardiol is the most secure for minutes. I wouldn't dare say 100% secure as with any Man City assets, but defenders wise I think Gvardiol is quite up there. Really good things to like about Gvardiol as I just mentioned. But I take a look at the other side of the coin as well. Firstly, the fixtures are a little bit of a concern for me because Southampton in game week 9 is not really an issue, but it's Bournemouth away in game week 10. Now Bournemouth is not an easy place to travel to by any means, and then it's Brighton away, Tottenham at home, Liverpool away. I will start to question how many clean sheets are going to come for Gvardiol in the next few as well. And secondly, this season Man City have not been keeping a lot of clean sheets at all. They always seem to be the ones conceding the first goal, which is quite a worrying sign in terms of defensive numbers. So that's not great. And also Gvardiol, in terms of his hauls for the past few game weeks, has been relying quite a bit on his attacking returns. So that is not ideal. If we are paying 6 million for a defender, we would ideally hope that the clean sheets are kind of the bread and butter and something that forms the base points for Gvardiol, and then hope that the attacking returns stack on top of that. But right now what we are seeing is that the clean sheets are in short supply and his attacking returns are coming in. So I would start to question how sustainable that is for the next few game weeks. And secondly as well, I think when Champions League comes into the mix, I don't think Gvardiol would be rested that much in that his minutes for Premier Leagues to me still feels quite secure. But it's just that if he plays lots of games as well, I think there will be some form of fatigue setting in, and those are tricky games that he has moving forward. So again, will he be able to keep up that attacking return or the rate at which he is scoring those goals in the games where he doesn't keep a clean sheet? Because that would essentially mean that no attacking return and no clean sheet is a blank for him. So I will start to think about these things when I'm transferring Gvardiol in. Again, as I say, those of you guys with Saliba, you might be looking to move to Gvardiol because of this Southampton game, but I would give a bit more thought into the fixtures moving forward and see if I'm comfortable having Gvardiol for those games. If you are, then I don't mind making this move. So next up is Garnacho, who was another very highly requested player. Now he's already seen 39k transfers in so far and is still quite a bit of a differential at 7.9%. Now I think when I'm looking at the Manchester United assets, I would ask myself firstly, have a lot of things changed about the player? that I would be okay to go for him, because Manchester United are obviously a team that is very volatile. We don't really know how they will perform. So again, when I assess Garnacho, for example, when I look at the past few game weeks and I compare it to now, what has changed? Firstly, in the past few game weeks, he was not really an option because he was not getting consistent minutes. He was getting benched for Ahmad, for example. And also in some games, he was merely just used as a substitute, basically. So he wasn't getting consistent minutes. Now, in the last 4 games, he has started every single game and played 90 minutes. So in terms of his starts moving forward, you would begin to think that those are good enough numbers to back that he will continue to start in the next few game weeks and get good minutes. That's one. The previous few game weeks, Manchester United were in a kind of a difficult fixture run where they did play quite a number of tricky opponents. Now in game week 9, they have quite a good run of fixtures moving forward, as you can see on the left hand side of the screen. So I think fixtures wise, they've turned for Manchester United. They are one of the teams with a good run of fixtures moving forward. And I think obviously them being Manchester United, they have a bit of stigma in their assets, in that, you know, we tend to think that firstly they won't return or they're not in very good form. But I would like to kind of propose that Garnacho to me is still, at this point, as I've said since the start of the season, Manchester United's best attacker this season so far. Even in the substitute appearances that I've seen Garnacho play in the first few game weeks, he still comes off to me as someone with huge ability, and we know what he can do in terms of, you know, contributing from attacking returns. And I think in general, when I look at Garnacho as an attacking asset, I really like how explosive he is. So now that he's getting consistent minutes and now that the fixtures are there for Garnacho, I honestly like him as a bit of a differential. And to be frank, I do think, like, if I was choosing between someone like Garnacho and Brennan Johnson for someone to transfer in the midfield spot for about 6-ish million, I do think like Garnacho comes quite close to Johnson, and for some people I would imagine that they would choose Garnacho ahead of Johnson as well. So I really don't mind him as a pick for what he offers, and also, you know, the ability that he has, the fixtures he has moving forward. He is someone that can make a difference to the Manchester United team, and if they are to turn it around, I do think like they will need Garnacho to perform. So he has it in him. The only thing, again, I would say, as I've kind of mentioned already, is that Manchester United are a very volatile side, and they are a side that rely hugely on confidence as well. If they start to pick up a couple of poor results, you would always fear that, you know, Ten Hag will feel he needs to do something, and then maybe Garnacho drops out again, right? So that would be one worry that I have. So he's not a, you know, very straightforward transfer in, where there are some risks associated with Garnacho, but objectively, from what he offers as an FPL asset, I really like it, and I think it does make quite a bit of sense for those of you guys who want to transfer Garnacho into your teams. So to wrap up today's video, I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about the best cheap forwards to go for now in game week 9, because I find myself in this position as well, where I have Kai Havertz in my team, and I do think that I'm likely to sell him, so I would be in the market for a cheap forward, because it does look like they provide very good value at this point in time. Lots of them have good fixtures moving forward, so this is likely where I would go. Now, in terms of the assets that you see on the screen right now, what I have is their data based on the past 6 game weeks, and I've sorted them in terms of non-penalty expected goals, simply because I think in terms of an attacker or a forward, if we are buying them, you would largely look at the goal contribution and how, you know, likely they are to get quality chances. So let's start with the first player, or even before I start, the main reason why I haven't included one other player here, which is Chris Wood. His fixtures are not super good, you know, in the next few. So I don't think that now is the time to be buying Chris Wood. If I'm looking at buying a cheap forward, if I don't have him already, I wouldn't go for Chris Wood. I would kind of look elsewhere. So honestly, again, these are the players I would be looking at. The first one is Raul Jimenez. Now, he is the one with the best data, in that his expected assist is kind of second in this list, second to Cunha, 0.87 expected assists in the past 6 game weeks, and his non-pen XG is the highest out of everyone at 2.1. So as a result of his XG, he has gotten 3 goals. So there's not too much of overperformance, and essentially what it tells me is that the quality of chances Jimenez has been getting is quite good. So I don't mind him as a pick. Fixtures moving forward are very good as well. He is definitely one of the players I am considering, but also something that plays at the back of my mind is Rodrigo Muniz does exist. And there's always a chance that Jimenez does not perform for a period of time and then Rodrigo Muniz comes back in. So that's one of my main concerns with Jimenez. But another good thing about Jimenez at this point is it does seem to me, I mean, there's no confirmation for sure, but if Andreas Pereira has missed the penalty that we saw in kind of game week 8, does that now mean that Jimenez is first choice penalty taker? We don't have confirmation on that, but that is also something that just plays in the back of my mind as to whether I should go for Jimenez or not. Now, the next player I have is Yoane Wissa. Now, of course, before he got injured, he was at the top of everyone's list when Brentford's fixtures turned. Everyone wanted to go for him, and then he got injured against City. And since then, he's only just come back, played a couple of minutes, and did not return against Manchester United. Now, there was no surprise. He's only just come back from injury. But the fixtures moving forward for Brentford are really, really good. And we know how good Wissa played before he got injured this season. His past 6 game weeks kind of data in terms of non-pen XG is 1.43. And he scored 2 goals as a result of that. A huge amount of this was really, quality chances that he got in the earlier game weeks. He did not really get a lot of chances in the Manchester United game. So I do think like this is kind of past data for him before he got injured. But again, not too much over performance. And the Wissa and Mbeumo kind of pairing does work really well. And immediately now in game week 9, it's a super plum fixture for him. It's Ipswich. So if I'm looking to get immediate returns, Wissa is a really good asset to go for. But even so, when I look further forward, Brentford's fixture run is still very, very good. So Wissa, again, another player I'm seriously considering. Now, Delap personally is slightly lower down the list for me, though in terms of non-pen XG, he has gotten 1.36. He's also scored 4 goals as a result of that, so he's really been overperforming his data quite a bit. So I don't really like that from an asset in that I'd rather someone who gets quality chances over a longer period of time and thereafter converts it into goals. The fixtures are there for Ipswich, but I think attackingly, I look at the other teams like Brentford, Wolves, Fulham, I do think that those are better attacks than someone like Ipswich, for example. So I do think like Delap is not really in my considerations, but he is in this list because of the kind of 1.36 XG that he did kind of pick up in the earlier game weeks. Now the next 2 are the Wolves assets, and obviously there's a bit of comparison to do here because Cunha is at 6.5. He's 1 million more expensive than Strand Larsen. But I also look at the numbers and I kind of can understand why. Because Cunha is slightly more creative. The role that he plays is behind Strand Larsen. He's not really functioning like how he did last season, where he was playing in the kind of a number 9 spot. Now Cunha has dropped back a little bit this season to play behind Strand Larsen, to use Larsen as a bit of a point man, to kind of draw players to him, and then Cunha runs off of Strand Larsen. So because of that, Cunha is picking up 1.04 XA, Larsen obviously a lot less in 0.29, but Larsen's non-pen XG numbers are very respectable and comparable to Cunha as well, almost 1 for both of them. So they've both gotten 2 goals this season. One thing I would say that you get when you're going for Cunha is that you get penalties for that extra 1 million. So it's not as if you're paying 1 million for no real difference, because if that was the case, I'd just go for Strand Larsen. There are good things about Cunha, like him being on penalties and him getting not only goal threat but also assist threat as well. So I do think like if you do have enough money, Cunha is still the one I would go for. But if budget is a constraint, I honestly don't think Larsen is a very bad option to go for from Wolves as well. Now obviously Wolves have one of the best fixture runs moving forward from game week 9 all the way until you next need to wildcard probably. So honestly, when I look at all these options, I would say someone like Jimenez or the Wolves assets, these are the ones I'm seriously considering as well. And the last 2 that I've put in here as a bit of a special mention, but I don't think they are as high up my list as well, is Iliman Ndiaye and also Rasmus Højlund. Now, numbers wise, obviously they pale a bit in comparison to the kind of other assets for different reasons. Ndiaye plays for Everton and he's not really someone that picks up a lot of XG from the position that he plays. Now, he's a little bit further left. He's not, someone that is kind of in the box like Calvert-Lewin getting lots of XG. He creates the chances for himself to put shots away, and Everton in general don't create a lot of XG in games. So Ndiaye getting 2 goals in the past 6 game weeks is someone that I think has a lot of technical ability, but because he plays for an Everton side where I do think like a lot of the chances he creates needs to come from himself, I do think like, it may not be consistent for him to, kind of keep getting returns week in, week out. So not a player that I'm seriously considering, but I think there is special mention to be given to him. And then there's Rasmus Haaland. Again, a bit of a special mention, but it's simply because he scored against Brentford, the winning goal for Manchester United. It also does seem like he is kind of ahead of Xerxes now, given that he's back from injury and looking in decent enough form. So I think at 6.9 million, he is the most expensive asset here. Fixtures wise, again, as I've said, are good for Manchester United, but I also do think like there is risk involved in Haaland in that he would potentially be substituted early for Xerxes, for example, though he is, to me, the first choice striker for Manchester United. And obviously, Manchester United are in a time where they are quite volatile in terms of attack. So do we want to trust the Manchester United attack? And if you're buying kind of a cheaper forward, it's not a position that you always want to change. So would you be comfortable holding Haaland all the way through? So that's something I would think about for the rest of the players as well. Will I be happy to hold these assets all the way through? So that's a bit of thoughts on all these players. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of these cheap forwards if you're in the market for one. Which one would you buy? If not, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do drop a like, please do subscribe. I do apologize as well if things look a little bit different, if I sound a bit different, if the background is a little bit blurry. I am recording this not with my usual setup, but still hopefully I was able to convey my thoughts in this video and it helped you guys as well. So please do drop a like, again please do subscribe, and I will catch you guys in more Game Week 9 content coming very soon. Bye bye.